Hey guys, and welcome back to another experiment. Today, we're going to do an experiment with the iPhone. And by iPhone, I mean 4 iPhones. I have the iPhone 10, the iPhone 8 Plus, the iPhone 7 Plus, and the iPhone 6s Plus. And I went out and took the same photo with all 4 devices a bunch of different times, and then lined them all up so that we could go through them and see what the difference is as far as the camera is concerned. Now let me make it clear, all of these have great cameras, but I was kind of interested in the difference year over year. How much better do they get? And also, part of me also kind of wonders what the big difference is between the 8 Plus and the 10. So without further ado, let's look at the first photo. And here we have my obligatory coffee. So I have a problem here. All of these kind of look really similar to me, and in a weird way, actually, the 6s Plus looks better than the 7 Plus. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip this one. Ready? Next, let's look at the photo of my friend here, and now we start to see a bit more of a difference. So maybe the lighting was just perfect in that last one. I was taking them from the all exact same angle, and they just all decided to do the exact same thing. Maybe, I don't know. But in this one, I mean, we can clearly see, if we zoom into her face, for example, the 6s Plus is much darker. There's a lot less detail. Then we have the 7 Plus, which made her brighter, but is a lot less detail. She's pretty, actually, like almost blurry. And then looking at the 8 Plus and the 10, they're basically the same, I would say, which makes kind of sense. They share components, but they definitely look much better than, say, the 7 Plus and the 6s Plus. And so, like, that's actually a decent difference in my opinion. So this is probably the photo I should have led with, if we're honest. But regardless, you know, it's important to see that there can be images that all look the same, and in this case, we can see a clear trajectory from the 6s Plus all the way up to the 10. So, next. This was in the Kellogg's store, which they have one of these in New York, which I think is funny. It's like a co-working location where you can get a bunch of cereal. It's kind of fun, and unlimited coffee. It's great. Anyway, they had all these lined up and well lit, so I figured I would take a photo with all these phones with this. And again, we're getting close. These ones, because of the lighting, because of everything, I think it's harder to tell a difference right now. But then again, if we do things like zoom into the Rice Krispies, like the top of the box, we can see it's a little softer on the 6s Plus, and then the 7 Plus, again, kind of makes it a little brighter, which is odd. But it does also keep some softness compared to where the 8 Plus and the 10 are just a little sharper. We do the same thing if we zoom into, say, the cornflakes, right? You can definitely tell them the word cornflakes, the box itself, is a lot sharper and just better on the 10 and the 8 Plus than it is on the 6s and the 7 Plus. So the next one, this one even does also show a good progression here, although it's funny that the 8 Plus differentiates from the 10. But in this case, we can tell that it just kind of decided, for whatever reason, to adjust the color temperature a little bit differently. But if we zoom in to the Flatiron building itself and to some of those windows on the front, we're gonna see that the 6s Plus, one, is a lot darker. It's also got a lot more noise in it. The 7 Plus, again, so we're noticing a pattern here, I think. The 7 Plus tends to go on the brighter side, period. It just exposes things a little bit differently than all of the other devices. And then it's probably a little bit sharper than the 6s Plus. But then we have the iPhone 8 Plus, which actually looks great, zoomed in, and the 10 as well. Now the 10, of course, made it a little more blue, but again, that was a color temperature decision by the phone in the moment. Next, we will look at this outside night shot, and this also does show us a nice progression, just judging by exposure, right? You don't even have to really zoom in on this one. You can see that the 6s Plus is much darker than the 7 Plus, which is a little bit lighter, and then we have the 8 Plus and 10, which are much brighter and have just a better HDR effect probably going on in here as well, that gives the whole image just a much better look. Then with another nighttime outdoor shot, we can see, again, the same kind of things happening even before I zoom in. The 6s Plus is much darker than the 7 Plus, which is darker than the 8 Plus and the 10. And again, we're finding this pattern that the 8 Plus and the 10 are very similar. And we are getting the progression that we kind of expected, which is like the 6s Plus to the 7 Plus, and then the 8 Plus and 10 are pretty interchangeable. Now, one place in this photo, and I've done this with other phones, that you can kind of tell a lot of differences when you zoom into the back, right? To that yellow building in the back. 6s Plus, again, much darker. It just not as sharp. The 7 Plus, a little bit sharper. The iPhone 10 and 8 basically doing almost exactly the same thing like we mentioned, but looking much better than the other two. And finally, this was kind of like my motion blur shot that I wanted to test. So this was in a bar at night, and I took a bunch of photos, like 8 of them on each of these phones, and took the one with the least blur to put into this. I'm not sure why. The 8 Plus just had a much harder time. All of the shots kind of look like this. I don't know if that was a fluke. Maybe it was something I did. We'll write that off kind of as an outlier, like it's probably not a good experiment. Something probably went wrong in that. I'm not sure what, but something might have. But if we look at all of them, they all do a pretty good job of handling the blur. Like there is some blur here and there, but you know, it's not too bad. And again, we're seeing the same exact thing. 7 Plus, a little bit brighter. It's a lot more exposed than say the 6S Plus and the iPhone 10 and the 8 Plus in this case, because it's a little blurry, it's hard to tell, but the iPhone 10 is a much sharper photo. There's a lot less blur and just kind of does a better job overall. A really great place to actually zoom in here is if you zoom into the guy's head. I mean, it's very clear to be able to tell, like you can see his hair follicles basically a lot better on the iPhone 10 than you can on the 7 Plus or the 6S Plus. And that being our last photo, that concludes our camera comparison. And I think it basically just tells us what we already kind of knew, but it's nice to see in person that the 8 Plus and the 10, very similar cameras, very similar devices, very similar photos, obviously. The 6S Plus, much darker, much grainier. The 7 Plus, just a hair better than the 6S Plus, and they fit exactly where they should, because that's how Apple plans them, if we're being honest, I'm sure. But also, of course, there are years between these devices, so keep that in mind. All of them are great photos, though. I don't think there's anything wrong with the 6S Plus photos. It's just next to those other phones, it looks a lot worse. But yeah, there you go. Let me know what you guys think of this test of these types of videos. If you want me to do more of these, if you'd like me to do something to try to improve on them, I would love to hear from you guys. Always like hearing some feedback. Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video though, please thumbs up it or share it. It is greatly appreciated. And if you want more videos like this, please check out the rest of my channel. And if you like what you see there, please subscribe. And don't forget to check the bell next to the word subscribe so you get notified when I do new videos. As always though, regardless, thanks for watching.